The next speaker is second year C class, Mr. Tzu Chun Lin. The title is Don't Put All Your Eggs in a Chinese Basket.
In 2008, former Taiwanese President Ma declared they were opening the floodgate to tourism from China. Taiwan had virtually no Chinese tourists in 2007. At first, most Taiwanese people, especially those who were working in the hospitality industry, were cheering, excited for this radical new policy to be put into reality because most of the hotels in Taiwan were old and dying and without customers. A few years after the policy started, the number of inbound tourists to Taiwan grew dramatically. An old hotel became new, stylish, modern hotels, and the number of rooms was totally not enough. So more and more new hotels were built, and so the restaurants and bus companies, they were all thinking this wonderful scenario will go on and on forever. Unfortunately, it turned out just to be another big bubble. After Taiwan's presidential election, the Chinese government decided to cut down a huge chunk of Chinese tourists to Taiwan. And all Chinese travel agencies suddenly stopped sending any tour groups to Taiwan. Now, even in some very popular tourist spots, almost half of the hotels over there are waiting sale. And some of them couldn't even afford utility fees and are closed. Well, what can Japan learn from this tragic story? In 2011, a huge earthquake almost destroyed Japan's hospitality industry. But Japan didn't give up easily. Japan tried everything it could and turned the crisis into a great opportunity. And in 2016, there were over 24 million foreign tourists. Japan is right now a tourism powerhouse. It wasn't an easy job, but if we look a little more closely into those numbers, we can find that about 30% of the foreign tourists are from mainland China. And as for money spending, Chinese represent 40% of that, which is 550 billion yen. Indeed, they have very high purchasing power, and they are so essential and critical that we cannot imagine what would happen if one day we suddenly lost all of them. Well, a good and reliable airplane usually have 2 or more engines. For example, more than 1/3 of the foreign tourists in the United States and Thailand are from outside their neighboring countries, while Japan only has 16%. So, the crucial challenges are lowering the dependency on China and diversifying our foreign tourist sources. But how? Well, first, we need to increase non-Chinese tourists. And in order to do that, we need to look for our new targets. For example, countries with large Muslim population like Indonesia, United Arab Emirates, and Turkey, or new emerging countries with growing economies and growing populations like Thailand, India, and Vietnam. In the near future, those countries are going to have very high purchasing power, just like China does right now. And therefore, we have to pay more attention to them to make sure they will become our loyal tourists in the near future. Second, after targeting our new guests, we need to study them and to walk in their shoes and not only find out their interests and needs, but also the barriers and the problems stopping them from coming to Japan. For example, in Japan, 80% of the Muslim tourists bring their own toothpaste and soap, which means, aside from recommending good halal restaurants, we should also focus on providing halal-certified amenities in our hotels. And also during my internship, an Indian family complained that it's so hard to find a complete non-smoking restaurant in Tokyo. And some young Westerners were shocked and couldn't understand why people with tattoos are not welcome at some hot springs. Well, all those are cultural problems. They are fixable and they should be fixed. Third, solving all those problems and enhancing mutual understanding with open mind instead of ignoring them. By doing this, we can find out what their real needs are, and therefore we can precisely increase their overall satisfaction and tour quality. And after they go back to their country, they'll do advertising for Japan for free by word of mouth or Facebook, Instagram, etc. And therefore, Japan will have a sustainable growth in tourism industry. And finally, I hope Japan can turn its attention to the demographics of tourists and not just focus on the raw numbers, because everyone in those numbers represent a person, a guest, and we should treat all of them with the spirit of Ichigo Ichie, which means one time, one meeting. And don't get me wrong, as a native Chinese speaker who is going to work in Japan, by the way, of course, I love to see more and more Chinese tourists coming to Japan and spending their money. But we should all understand that all things do come to an end. Perhaps we shouldn't put everything in one basket, especially when this basket is made in China. Hope you enjoy my speech. Thank you for listening.